my loves, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, hello, my name is Loey. I feel very dressed up to be filming a Petscop video super late at night on this fine weekend. I was shooting some outfits earlier, so I kind of have a weird wardrobe to work with for filming today. So you guys are getting me if I was actually doing something on my Saturday night instead of filming Petscop. Although this is way more fun than like going out. Let me just be really honest. I know it has been a while since we have done a Petscop not update because the story has not updated, but just another episode here on my channel. I'm really sorry for that. It's not that I didn't think you guys wanted it, and it's not that I didn't want to do it. There have just been so many other things in the mix lately that I've just been like a chicken with my head cut off, I feel like. Let's talk a little bit about episodes 6 through the beginning of 11 of Petscop. Now, if you have missed my previous video, none of this is really going to make any sense. I will have it linked down below, as well as right now, I don't know which side, as a little iCard. Like I said, this isn't going to make a whole lot of sense if you're not already cut up to speed. I'm going to not be explaining things that were already seen in part 1 to save time. So yeah, check it out if you want to. But for now, I'm just going to jump straight into episode 6 of Petscop. Now, this episode is particularly interesting because it opens up with a shot of the windmill. But shortly after this opening shot with these creepy sounds in the background, Paul informs us that it is exactly 2 hours and 39 minutes later when the next thing happens. So it's just straight footage of the windmill. Paul has mentioned previously that this kind of stuff is the stuff that's happening when he's not actively playing the PlayStation with Petscop on it. So it's like this is happening when he's out of the room, it's kind of recording itself, so on, so forth. But literally 2.5 hours passes until a shadow person comes and sort of adjusts the camera. Now, we know from the previous episode that there was a camera focused on the windmill, or where the windmill used to be. So this person comes and like moves the camera sort of towards a set of like blocks. The blocks spell out a number of things thanks to the help of this shadow person. Among them is the phrase, "Where is my house?" just showing the famous green house exterior. Shortly after this, the blocks spell out, "Where is the school?" And lastly, they say, "I will follow." We move back to the windmill, and exactly an hour and 24 minutes later, it just disappears. Paul returns, and his initial comment is on how freaking long those video clips are, and he seems to have a slight sense of humor about it.
That's kind of fun, actually. Going through a 4-hour video and noticing that on one half of the video, the windmill's going one direction, and in the other half, it's going in the other direction.
Now, being the smart cookie that he is, our character Paul goes to check out this area with the windmill and just see if anything has changed. And not only has the camera been changed to red, it has been lowered to kind of Paul's sprite's height, if that makes any sense. Because obviously the character, the shadow man, was like standing in front of it as it was filming, so it makes sense. Now, here's where things change from, oh, it's just the haunted video game playing itself, to pretty creepy. At this point, Paul finds Toneth, who was the bird with like a broken leg that he was unable to catch earlier. He approaches him in like the mess of blocks and catches him. But it is when he goes to the description page of Toneth that things get a little bit weird. Enter a description here. A bird. I think I forgot what birds look like. Funny, stupid blob monster, says Mike. That's what it is. Painter, painting puzzle. Catch Randus first. Has a broken leg for some reason. I already hung him on a wall. Too late to take it back. It makes me think about the dog, actually, because when the car hit him, I thought, at least it'll be over soon. He survived it, and I was the only one who still wanted to put him down. A dog isn't innocent. And then here it's cut off. When a dog wags its tail and it appears happy, it's not real. I guess that's Toneth then. Toneth, 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 so on, so forth. The end. It's yucky outside. As you probably already noticed, the text just kept going off of the screen, so it looks like our fair game is breaking just a little bit. Paul, seemingly not sure what to do with this information, approaches the tool once more, and he asks a series of questions which of course prompt answers. When asking, "Where's my house?" the answer is, "You'll never go home." When asking, "Where's the school?" he receives the prompt, "You can't go back in time." Here's where Paul remarks that the game seems to be trying to convince him that there is an entity present within it.
The game is trying very hard to make it seem like there's an entity in it. Like a ghost or an AI trying to communicate with me. But the way you know that there's a ghost in a game trying to communicate with you is if it comes out, if it stops being distant, and it comes out and you can have a real-time back and forth with it, and it stops being so one way. Like I leave my PlayStation and it comes out and does this whole pre-recorded thing.
Now, this is also interesting because he notes that he had created other save files and didn't experience any of the weirdness. And the game doesn't seem to really care whether you experience everything or not. But we'll move right along to chapter 7, or episode 7. I feel as we get deeper into Petscop, the beginnings of these episodes get weirder and weirder, and this one is no exception. We open with Paul's sprite facing a corner in the quitter's room, until suddenly these notes play. Maybe beeps is the more appropriate term. Have a listen for yourself.
Something's happening. Oh, hi there.
As you can tell, what's different here is we're not mirroring that stick figure girl that we have been mirroring in the quitter's room this whole time. Then, out of nowhere, she reappears. Paul makes a remark along the lines of,
"That might be it."
He then retreats to the corner again, I'm assuming to try the same thing over, but reads the "Do you remember being born" sign. And directly under it now, it says, "Come here." Now, that text was glowing like a certain familiar tool, am I right? So I think that that's what he listened to, and he goes to find Tool with an unprompted message hovering above it. This is interesting because previously Tool would only talk when Paul asked it questions that were pre-programmed to be answered. But now it says, "I love you, New Maker. Please show Marvin where his house is." Paul responds by asking, "Who are you?" And then Tool says, "Go there and he'll follow you. His daughter is in there." Paul, trying to go off of the clues that he was already given, asks, "Remember being born?" But the answer this time is also wants 1,000 pieces for Machine Beyond School Basement Stairway. Tool is blatantly ignoring the questions here, and it seems that when it is glowing, it is somewhat transcendent of the game in nature, in the sense that it's just ignoring these questions and answering what it wants to tell Paul. Or I don't even know that it thinks that the game is Paul, but instead is directly addressing New Maker. But then again, I guess that we've been told before that we are the New Maker. Anyways, all of that aside, Paul does something particularly interesting here, and he returns to the easel, like mini game, and creates Mike's face without eyebrows. His only real reasoning for this is that eyebrows seem important, which is odd because if you remember from the last episode, there was a specific note in which we were addressed as being excited that Care wasn't growing eyebrows. Interesting. Now, For some reason, he decides to create Kara's face on the easel with Mike's eyebrows. And he himself says something pretty weird here.
So this is Kara with eyebrows. I put Mike's eyebrows on her. I could have put other eyebrows on her, but I didn't. I put Mike's on her.
That's a bizarrely specific thing to make so noted here. In every one of the children's rooms is a table, and this table contains items usually directly involving the kids. So it's like something to do with their personality, so on and so forth. In Kara's room with Mike's eyebrows, there's something blacked out on the screen. And at the end of the video, there is the following. We've had to cover something with a black box. Right now, we can't say why. Some other things we're expecting to censor in the future. A big present with a sticker on it. Something on a wall in a black house. Written on a chalkboard. Okay, until this point, we have not talked to anyone other than Paul. So who is we? The only people that we know of in this story are Paul. Everything else is in this seemingly fictional game, Petscop. But now we are being addressed, the audience, from a we saying that they have had to censor something. Why? Petscop 8 is a little bit bizarre and kind of on the shorter side. Paul's sprite just dodges cars in a tunnel area, and then abruptly and seemingly out of nowhere, he finds a sprite that looks exactly like him, but with almost like a gem on his head, like one of the gems that you collect in the overworld. It takes Paul on a bit of a wild goose chase, but then eventually shows him two things: the school and a house. Out of nowhere, the sprite, who we're assuming is Marvin, just runs off. And Paul tries to catch him for pretty much the rest of this episode to no avail. But I also wanted to note that he said something pretty interesting about 2004 for some reason at the end of this.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's not here now. There's not even a passageway or anything. Can you remember when you saw this? Well, it could have changed between then and 2004. After 2004, my mom had it reportedly.
Petscop 9 opens pretty creepily, like the rest of them have for the most part, with Paul not saying anything. But then we quickly realize that it is because he's not playing. It is on a demo screen. When Paul regains the control, he immediately, for some reason, goes to that weird shed area where he had picked flowers off of the daisy. Instead of anything resembling the daisy now being there, there's just a hole in the floor, as well as like a pitchfork and a shovel, which we saw a few episodes earlier when Creepy Shadow Monster Man was spelling out stuff with the blocks. In the next room over is still the twitching sprite of Care. What I find interesting about Paul going down to this shed for seemingly no reason when we haven't been there in episodes and episodes is that the demo reel was showing the sprite walking on the treadmill in the overworld, all the way down to the counter being 0. It's a known clue or fact, or however you want to explain it, in the Petscop community that scene of the sprite walking on the treadmill perfectly times out to Paul's sprite picking the daisy's petals. So that's interesting. Did Paul know that, or was it just something inside of him that told him to? Now, if you guys remember, there was a note that was left in the beginning of this entire series. In like the first episode, Paul reads a note that was left with Petscop. And it said something along the lines of, when I walked downstairs, I turned to the right and I became a shadow monster man. For some reason here, walking into Care's part of the shed, he turns right and becomes a shadow man. As the shadow man, Paul can not only approach the windmill and see a windmill there instead of just like a blank space, but there's also a way to enter the windmill. And what's in here is truly weird. There is a girl spinning on a gear in this windmill. We've never seen her before, as far as I know. There's also a white tool type of object. When Paul clicks this, for some reason he collects a ton of gems, and then when the screen flashes back, the girl is gone. Paul returns to the easel minigame and enters the girl's face. He receives the following prompt: you found her. You may visit her room. In the girl's room, there is a tool as well as a windmill on her table. Also in her room is a sign that is interactable, and it says the following: "You must have guessed, but I was looking through your things. I found that picture of you from 1977, standing in front of an old windmill with your friend. You went there, and it was a bad idea. Your friend and the windmill both disappeared into thin air. Her sister was holding the camera. She took another picture minutes later. Just you. No windmill and no friend. You married her sister, and years later, your friend was reborn as your daughter. Your wife won't admit this is true, but I know it, because I found the evidence. Your friend never returned with you, and the windmill was gone. I went to see it myself. Where is it? What did you do? Signed, Rainer, Newmaker." This is interesting because we have now been told that we are the Newmaker in this series. We are the Newmaker, we are under the Newmaker plane, so on and so forth. But then this note is signed by Newmaker. I know this seems a little bit intense at the moment, and there's a lot of stuff I am spewing at you, but I promise you it will come to a head. So Paul is pretty quiet at this point and not saying a whole lot, but he goes on to find almost what looks like a classroom or something with two large gifts in it, as well as like a chalkboard where I don't know what they're called, but they're those little like windmill looking things on sticks that you blow on. You know what it is. It's on the screen. I don't know what you call it. When opening up the gifts, Paul finds one with a green key inside, but then the other contains something that has been censored on screen, and it looks like a very large item, whatever it was. Paul even curses here, saying it startles him so badly, and his voice isn't the normal chill like guy playing a video game voice here. He sounds genuinely freaked out, and it leads you to wonder what exactly is beneath that black box. But also, if you're me, you don't really want to know. So Paul continues to wander. He kind of reaches this point where it's a little bit hard sometimes to tell in Petscop, even with like my computer turned up all the way on brightness, exactly what's happening. It can be a little bit dark sometimes, both in the type of game that it is, but then also just the art is a little bit dark. So he sort of steps into what looks like an elevator or something. I don't really know. And he goes back up into the overworld, where we have not been in quite a while. He does a few things here, but one of the most notable is that he, for some reason, approaches the treadmill, gets it all the way back up to 16, then one by one takes it all the way back down to 0, then -1. He then returns to the shed where the twitching Care sprite has been. At this point, she is turned into Care NLM, which means she is catchable, unlike that creepy twitching sprite from before. So he catches her and then immediately goes to like his sort of menu screen to read her description. What I find pretty interesting here is that the game tells him at this point, for some reason, there's always like a little note off to the right of every like menu screen whenever he pauses. The game tells him, you're in the other place too. We'll come back to that later. Care NLM's description reads as follows. Care NLM escaped from the school's basement and wandered the Newmaker plane for days. To catch her, you had to lie, but it may not be a lie forever. You're the Newmaker. You can turn Care NLM into Care A and close the loop. Again, another response to us being the Newmaker and being able to fix things. So Paul, with this information, deposits Care NLM into the child library, which he previously was unable to deposit anything into because he only had pets. He receives the following prompt. You've decided to leave Care NLM. If you change your mind within 6 months, you can take Care NLM back. What month is it anyway? What year is it? Paul ends this episode by inserting Care's face into the easel machine minigame, going to Care's room and recapturing her. I know there's a lot happening here, but again, it kind of makes sense as you keep following the story. So in part 10, Paul, again, is just silent, and it seems that the more that is happening in this world, the quieter he is. He's not joking, he's not making light of the situation. He sort of seems uncomfortable, if I say so myself. It opens in the overworld, episode 10, and Paul is basically just fumbling with the switches that formerly contained one of the pets that he caught in like episode 1. We don't really know why he does this, but then he attempts to leave, and the door is just shut in his face. The game freezes and then reloads, warning him of potential file corruption in all 3 of his files that he has saved, both his test file, backup file, and his normal Paul file. He presses on despite the corruption warning and returns to the quitter's room, where now we are on the other side of the glass. Whereas formerly we have been like the reflection and the mirrored image of the girl on the other side, now we are on the other side. The only other noteworthy thing that I wrote down for this episode was that Paul approaches Tool and asks a few basic questions. He tries asking what month it is, no answer. What year it is, no answer. He finishes by simply asking, where was the windmill? This receives a censored image, and the episode abruptly ends. I kind of wanted to stop it there, but I feel like that's a bit anticlimactic. Now, episode 11 is like 30 minutes long, and it's where things really start to pick up in the series. So I'm gonna continue on in my next episode, which I promise won't take that long, but I did want to quickly talk about sort of the beginning of episode 11, because I feel like there's some pretty noteworthy stuff here. There's finally a description box to episode 11, whereas all of the rest of them have just been blank. And it says the following: everything we wish to say is below. The purpose of this YouTube channel is to preserve and display the recordings within the video game Petscop, while keeping some of their content private. They were first given to us as a Christmas gift many years ago. The game had an interesting journey before and after that day. Paul created some additional recordings in 2017 as a way to show Petscop gameplay to his friend. He created this account in order to upload those additional recordings in video format. He later passed ownership of the channel to us, but continued to record himself at our strong suggestion. Though he had issues with the arrangement, these have finally been settled. Please enjoy the recordings in Petscop. We do. Who are we? What is alarming here is how silent Paul has been these last few episodes recording. And now it seems as though somebody, this unseen we force, is forcing him to continue to record. Now, this episode begins with Paul like mid-monologue, and I'm gonna let you listen to a bit of what he said for yourself.
Signs along the way that I ignored, because it would have been a completely ridiculous idea to me. But when I found my room, it made, I was shocked at first, but it made sense. Especially considering where I found the game in the first place. That would be tied in some way to me through you. And I'm trying to think, when was the last time I saw any of you at all? It had to have been like 1999. I was a kid, I was a small kid. It would make sense in the timeline.
Pretty bizarre. Now, not to leave you on a crazy cliffhanger, but again, the episode is like 30 minutes long. I've already been recording this one for like half an hour, so I'm gonna go ahead and call it. But I hope you all enjoyed this part 2 of Petscop. If you did, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I love you all very much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!